ladies and gentlemen, we're going to begin the evening program now.
Sometime in the next few decades, humans will leave this planet to live in another world.
That means that some people in our life can be the first Martians. How about that?
We're finding out a lot about how to explore Mars in our station. Over 1,000 people from over 40 countries have actually participated in one crew or another.
It's the grandest adventure I could possibly imagine. That is, for me, the most important reason why we should pursue the establishment of life on Mars.
If we go to Mars in our time, 200 years from now, there'll be new branches of human civilization on Mars.
Okay. So, now, we've got a little more than that tonight. Okay, but that's a good start. Okay, so, I don't know, about 5 months ago or so, I don't know the exact date, I was contacted out of the blue by a gentleman named Oscar Castellino, and he said, "Hi, I want to help you get humans to Mars. How can I help? I'm an opera singer." And I said, "Okay, we can use an anthem. Something, you know, no movement has ever gotten anywhere without music. And you know, I want it to be grand, but I want it to be a song that is singable, okay, by people with average voices. In other words, it can't be the Queen of the Night, you know. It has to be something that people can sing. It has to be a Marseillaise for Mars. And because, you know, Roget de Lille composed the Marseillaise in, I think, 1792, and the young Napoleon Bonaparte heard it sung for the first time by the regiment from Marseille as they entered Paris, and you know, he said to the composer, you know, "Monsieur, your song is worth 20 regiments," and it is, at least, considerably more. Anyway, we need our own Marseillaise, and so Oscar set about composing it, and to both make it grand but singable, and I think he succeeded in that. And he wrote some words which were pretty good, but then I helped him a bit with the words. I have some credit on helping on the words. And then it was arranged for both piano and orchestra by James Welland, who is right here as well. And it was performed by the Royal Welsh Symphonia Orchestra. It was great, and they performed it in Bombay or someplace like that, and it was great. And they're here tonight to perform it. And I want you to listen really carefully, because after that, you're going to have an opportunity to perform it too. The music, sheet music's right on the table. All right, so without further ado, Oscar Castellino and James Welland in Rise to Mars.
But the power of human enterprise shall take us through and through. Rise to Mars, men and women, dare to dream, dare to strive, build a home for our children.
Monsieur, your song is worth 100 regiments. So now we're going to go to the primary speaker of the evening, which is Anousheh Ansari. Anousheh Ansari is an entrepreneur, a very successful one, extraordinarily successful one, considering that she began as a refugee from Iran, and who was one of the very first astronaut tourists, but most importantly had the vision to fund the X Prize, which was subsequently eventually won by Burt Rutan and Spaceship One, resulting in the creation of Virgin Galactic. And in a way, was the opening shot in the era that began in the early 2000 period of private space enterprise. Before Spaceship One, you know, the people who thought they were going to do something in space with private money were dreamers that never really came together. That was the first thing, and I think that gave enormous encouragement to further developments such as SpaceX, Blue Origin, and other such things that are emerging all over the place now. So, without further ado, Anousheh Ansari.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here with all of you tonight, and especially after that amazing, beautiful song that we all sang together. It really raised the energy of the room, and it's always wonderful to speak to a group that, I don't have to tell them why space is important, because we're all here because you understand it. So I was born a long, long time ago in a country far, far away in Iran. And I grew up, with my head in the skies. I loved the night skies. I would look up to the stars and imagine these other worlds, this other civilization. Imagine another girl looking down at planet Earth and thinking about the same things. And I always wondered what's out there. And this curiosity about, learning what's out there, understanding it and relating to it, and wanting to go up there was what got me interested in math and science at a very young age, and sort of built the rest of my life. And I looked up there and I kept wishing for aliens to come and abduct me. Obviously that didn't happen, so I had to come with an alternative way. But I was born to a very modest family in Iran. I grew up in Iran until I was 16 years old. And as I was growing up and imagining going to space, I told everyone that I'm going to go to space. I even drew this image and I gave it to my mom, and I went around the house, showed it to everyone, and said, this is how I'm going to go to space. And as you can imagine, they probably looked at me and they thought to themselves, this young girl, she's going to grow up, she's going to forget. Oh, it's such a nice picture. And of course, I'm one of those people that, when I say something, I really put everything behind it and I get it done. So I had to show them that I can do it, and do it exactly as I drew it when I was 6 years old. So you can imagine my mom's surprise when she saw this picture after my launch and remembered the drawing that I had given her a long, long time ago. But that's how humans, make change in our world and build different things. But change comes sometimes without you doing anything about it. So as I was growing up in Iran, the first big change that happened to me is when I was about 12 years old. The revolution happened, and everything around me changed. I mean, I was growing up in a country that was pretty liberal, and everything looked fine, and I never imagined my world would be turned upside down. And then here I was, 12 years old, and there were people shouting outside my window, burning cars, burning buildings. I'm very, very angry, and I've never seen that anger before in my life, and I didn't know where it came from, and it scared me. And then before I could even deal with that, then the war broke out with Iraq, and then there were bombings, and we had to go to shelters and all different things. And I just didn't understand why this was happening around me, and the world around me was falling apart. So I always could take refuge in the night sky. So even as the whole world around me was falling apart, I could go out there and look up at the night skies and remember that I'm part of a world that's much bigger than what I'm seeing around me, and I can belong to that bigger world, and I could take refuge in the night skies. And that's where I found peace, and I was able to survive whatever was happening around me. And that has become part of my life. And even today, that's what I do. So imagination is this powerful, powerful gift we have as human beings, and sometimes we forget about it. As children, we use it a lot, and as adults, we don't use it as often. But imagination is what has built our civilization, has allowed us to imagine things that don't exist and create them. Imagine places that we've never been, or create those places. So it's something that's very powerful, and it's like a spark of an idea that starts perhaps because we saw something someplace, or maybe we saw something on TV. I'm so excited about the new Star Trek coming out. and a wonderful book that you would read. I loved science fiction books. And then you start imagining yourself in those characters and those positions, and then you start making it come true. And this was my way of making my fantasy come true at one of our all-hands meeting with my management team, and I made the entire management team dress up in Star Wars costumes, and some of them were not happy with me. But as I was growing up and watching Star Trek, I thought, as I become an adult, I can go and apply to Starfleet Academy and become, the science officer on board Starship Enterprise and travel all the different galaxies, and I will, be able to make my dream come true. And when I came to US, that didn't happen. I looked for Starfleet Academy in the yellow pages. I couldn't find it. So then I had to do something myself. I had to find the opportunity somehow, some way to make, that dream, not only for myself, but for millions of others, a lot of you sitting here, to make that dream come true and at least take the first step toward that. And that's why, with my family, we became title sponsors of the Ansari X Prize to just fuel this sort of innovation around building something that can take humans to space, because the government space agencies had not fulfilled that promise for a long, long time. And thankfully, the $10 million prize became very successful. We had 26 teams that competed from 7 countries, and they all, actually, a lot of them had continued to develop what they were developing and contributed to this nascent, private space industry, the new space industry that has been created that's now estimated at hundreds of billions of dollars. So to me, that was exciting, and then to the team at X Prize. So since then, the 4 of us meeting in the basement of San Luis Science Center, things have changed a lot. We have gathered a lot of who's who of different types of tech industries and space industry, and have created a way of using competition to solve major challenges in the world. But space is still at heart of everyone on the board. So we have Google Lunar X Prize, which is our active prize in space, and continue to look for other ways of using competition to develop new technologies that benefits our industry. But when I talk about space, you can look at it, how the world of technology as it's changing is making it possible for everyone to participate in one way or another to make this future that involves space coming true. So if we look at how to get to space, and a lot of you guys have been talking about some of these technologies all day today. But we talked about Virgin Galactic suborbital flights and then orbital flights, and that sort of started with the Ansari X Prize and continuing to flourish as a lot of these policies have changed since we started working on it at X Prize. And then SpaceX and what Elon is doing, which is amazing, creating orbital capability with his reusable rocket, and very soon, hopefully, we'll see actually passengers taken to the International Space Station and beyond that. Blue Origin, another tech entrepreneur who's put his passion and his interest and his money behind creating capabilities to fly us again, suborbital and orbital capabilities. And I had the chance to visit one of the mock-ups, and it's going to be an amazing experience with those large windows to be able to see our planet from up there. Beyond that, there's, of course, a lot of advancement in the way we would travel once we're up there with the plasma engines and the successful test of that. But once we're there and we want to stay there, and especially for people in this room thinking about building a colony on Mars and staying on Mars, there are also technologies like 3D printing that is going to make a huge difference in what we need to take and how we can survive up there and not having to really deliver everything up there. Of course, the replicator, you know, we have the replicator there so we can get our Earl Grey hot up there. But also some recent, you know, interest in actually building larger structures up there on Mars, and the NASA $2.5 million prize for a design of a 3D printed habitat on Mars, which this is the winning design, of course. 3D printing is even now being used on designing the next version of the spacesuit and parts of that. But once we're there, we also may need additional capabilities. So augmentation, and through a lot of robotics capabilities that are developing and becoming more affordable, will allow us to do things, you know, in space that we were not perhaps able to do that, and then to allow our bodies to stay healthy and active while we are in space. So when I also talk about space, a lot of people say, well, we're spending, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars on space. What about here? We have so many problems here. And of course, I don't need to tell you why that is important, because, you know, when we're up there, we're actually doing a lot of things that always benefits our planet. Through the, you know, advancement of exponential technologies and Moore's law, imagery, computing, a lot of technologies have become so affordable that now we can, and they have been miniaturized, that we can build these really powerful CubeSats and nanosats and be able to, this is a picture of a few of them being launched from the International Space Station. You know, we're able to learn amazing stuff from, you know, about our own planet, and now people, you know, students in universities, in even high schools are building satellites and are able to launch these satellites at a very low cost and learn a lot about our environment. We also now have actually a company, and probably more of them coming along, thinking about how do we use the resources in space, so planetary resources, thinking about mining asteroids. And Moon Express wants to be able to bring things back from the moon, and there are a lot of these other companies that are being popping up around the world, looking at how do we make a space economy work better. One of the areas that I'm particularly interested that's you know, making some advancement is solar-powered satellites, and how can we harness the energy of the sun and bring it back to Earth. And then everyone talks about cloud computing, and you know, if we can find a way to actually put the clouds, put the computers above the cloud, where it's cold, where there's plenty of you know, solar power, and not pollute our environment as much as we are doing with the data centers we're building around the world. But more than anything else, I think for me, as a young girl growing up in Iran, space brought me hope. Space was where I went and I found refuge. And I know for millions of people out there, like this young girl who's a Syrian refugee in a refugee camp dreaming of becoming an astronaut, space can, you know, help you take yourself out of all the craziness that's going around you and allow you to imagine a different world and imagine a peaceful world. And for me, one of the biggest gifts that I had from my trip to International Space Station was the gift of knowing and having this perspective of our planet, which is a planet that's a home for all of us, all 7 million people living on it. And that once we can see that, once we can experience that, we can come together and make that vision that we see from space come true here on Earth. And that's, I think, one of the most important things. So with that, I hope that we can all together imagine a different future for our planet, for our world, for our young people, and make that come true. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of a video from my trip to International Space Station, hoping that it will take you on a mini journey to space. So can you play the video, please? Being under the stars and watching the stars twinkle, it was something that I wanted to experience for myself. So these are all the mystery from, and the unknown out there always have been drawing me to space. The universe is calling me. This is the winning flight of the X Prize. This is Brian winning.
I'm here at the Mojave Spaceport with Anousheh Ansari, the title sponsor of the Ansari X Prize. Congratulations on today's flight.
I'm not afraid of risk. This is a risk worth taking, and having the view we saw today on the monitors of Spaceship One, just an experience that's out of this world, and I would do anything, give my life to experience it. This is the morning of the flight. So as some of you know, when you fly on the Soyuz mission, there's a seat liner that's casted to your body to protect you during the landing, and you'll see why when you see the landing. This is the centrifuge training area. So this is actually the first time I was going into the centrifuge, and they surprised me. We were supposed to do a 4.5G, and then they said, we're going to do a 9G today. So my first experience was 9G. It's hard to breathe when you're in the centrifuge. This is the Soyuz simulation training area. Part of the survival training. This is the space station training facilities. Zero-G flights. Had a few friends that came in for a free joyride as well. These are my crewmates. This is the final exam. Zubrin was the commander of the Soyuz, and Michael Lopez Alegria was the commander of the ISS. And as part of, after you get ready, you go through the ceremony of, getting permission to board the rocket. You ride a bus to the rocket, and then there's a little elevator that takes you up to the capsule. So the rocket is much smaller than, of course, the launch facilities for the shuttle.
She's got about a minute left.
And the observers are much closer, so this is my family.
And the next time we see her, she'll be 220 miles in the sky. This is when the countdown started. This is my husband. Launch.
Not worried at all. my mom. She was on tranquilizer for the whole time I was in space. And this is me during the launch. My sister, she cried the whole time also when I was there. This is her dream come true. When my mom saw this, she thought I blew up. My husband had to explain, no, this is just a separation stage. So this is after 2 days. At that time, it still took 48 hours before docking to the space station. So this is what's left of the launch from the rocket and the capsule docking to the space station. There were 3 other crew members on board the space station when we arrived.
Space station, followed by Anousheh Ansari.
Thomas Ryder from Germany, Pavel Vinogradov from Russia, and Jeffrey Williams from NASA. For the first time, I will see the Earth as a really beautiful, glowing blue globe in the background of the universe. So one unique thing about being in space is that because you're floating, you don't have a concept of the floor, ceiling, or walls. You basically use the entire space. And if you can imagine in this room, you would be floating, you can have the tables that are upside down. So in the next part, you can imagine this is you flying through the space station, and you can see all around you, there are equipments, there are experiments. You're using the entire space. The station is much bigger now. This is the first unit that was launched, and it's a Russian segment, and it's used mostly for storage and where you take care of your hygiene. And this is sort of the command center for the station, the service module. And they're repairing the device that makes oxygen on board. They had a little problem before we arrived, so they were just fixing it. So let me show you my sleeping quarters now. This is my sleeping bag right here, right by the best view from the world. Let's see. It's sort of like a sack. Just hop in there, or if you can call it hop, I float in there. And I can go in and basically sleep like this. Best air mattress in the world. Sometimes
you have a window.
Yes.
Right. Can you sleep when it is
light?
Light.
Yeah, you see, I do this. So for a few minutes, I listen to music, and then I start getting curious about what's out there. And I come out here and sort of hook myself here and watch this beautiful view outside and enjoy myself. And then sometimes it's during the daytime, like now, and I can see the clouds, the Earth rotating by. I see the curvature right there.
The views from space station is amazing. From up here, everything's really peaceful, and you can't see the borders, you can't see different race, different religions. All you see is just one Earth, very peaceful and beautiful, rotating. And I think that's part of the reason I wish more and more people will be able to experience this firsthand, because talking to the astronauts and cosmonauts, they have a different perspective on life and how important it is for us to do everything in our power to preserve the only home we have in the universe.
So this is the kitchen dining room area. On the table there's a surface that you can warm the food. I'm making oatmeal there. Space station is the only place it's okay for you to play with your food. You're actually supposed to play with your food. Of course, you can see why there are no showers on board the station. It wouldn't work well. I missed it. I did practice. I am a chocoholic, so I ate all the M&Ms that were up there, and I blogged about it too. So astronauts have to exercise at least 2 hours a day to counteract the effect of being in microgravity on their muscles and their bones. So this is the last day I was on the space station as I was getting ready to come back. So coming down just takes a few hours, and this is the last stage of the parachute. So you land on the ground, and those are the retro rockets firing. So it's not an it's an explosion, but not an accidental explosion. So you can see the capsule is all burned up. I think that's reusable, really. You're very disoriented, so they help you out of the capsule. So they just check you. This is in near Astana in Kazakhstan. So they check you before flying you back. And my husband somehow managed to get on the helicopter. So it was a surprise visit.
Talk to me.
It's hard to describe the satisfaction you get by seeing something that you've longed for so long and you've worked so hard. It's becoming a reality.
So this is also part of the ceremony. You wear the traditional Kazakh clothes, and then they fly you back to Moscow. Yeah, he really loved the hat.
I don't have any plans to call this the final destination for myself and to basically retire from working in the space industry. I look at it as just one of the steps that I'm taking in a long journey, and my ultimate goal will be to bring this experience and the ability to fly to space to more and more people.
Let everything go. Let everyone know. You mean to be the change.
So I hope this gave you a glimpse of how it feels to be in space, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you. I think we have time for a few questions, yes? Okay, So I'm happy to answer any questions. You know, I usually answer anything you ask me. So. Just raise your hand. Yes.
Did you saw a movie before flying, like White Sun of Desert?
Yes, that's definitely part of the, so there's a whole tradition that every astronaut from anywhere in the world, when you fly with the Russian Soyuz mission, you go through these steps. And it's basically what Yuri Gagarin did on his day that he flew to space for the first time. So you go through the entire, you know, ceremonial thing, and one of them is to watch this movie, the White Sun on the Sand, or yeah. So it's a, you know, if you don't have anything better to do, you should watch it. Yes.
Are you planning to go back to the ISS again ever?
I hope so. It's one of those experiences when you do it once, you definitely want to do it again. I don't have any plans yet. Right now I'm running another company. I'm hoping to have an exit because the prices of the ticket has really, really gone higher than before. But, you know, I think I'm hoping that I will get to maybe fly on the Dragon or the Shepherd, one of the Blue Origin's flights, or you know, even before that, maybe on Virgin Galactic. So definitely would love to do that, but we'll see what happens. Yes.
What is your next project?
So I have, there's a lot of different things I'm doing. So as I said, when I launched to space, I also launched my new company with my husband and my brother called Prodia. It has nothing to do with space. It's in technology, is what I know. So that's occupying a lot of my time. I'm active, very active with X Prize, of course, working on different prizes that we're launching and expanding it. I'm also on the board of Peace First, and that was one of the things that I wanted to do after I came back from space station, which is, you know, find a way to actually help our youth gain a voice and become active participant in policy making, because I believe that our young people have sort of, technology has brought them together where there is a common language they speak, there's a commonality that it will help them solve these problems together collaboratively, whereas as adults and governments, we always see just the differences. So this is a platform we're launching in October. We've been working on it for several years now, so hopefully that will become a big part of my, and then I'm on a lot of different other organizations, boards.
You may have heard this before, but I was told that when it came time for you to leave the space station and return to Earth, why, they couldn't find you.
How did you know? Yes, I asked him, I said, what happens if you don't find me? Will you leave without me? And they're like, no, we cannot leave without you. We'll find you no matter where you hide. But it was the best time I've ever had in my life. I didn't want it to end. Even today, if I have an opportunity to go live in space, I would want to, and I would go live in space. So, you know, that's why the work you're doing here and the thinking of actually building a permanent place for people to be able to live in space, I think it's wonderful, and I hope it happens in my lifetime.
Thank
Mars, it's definitely, you know, one of the places I want to visit and, you know, perhaps stay there. I really love to be on Starship Enterprise. I want to explore everywhere. But definitely, I think the more time we spend in space, the more we learn about ourselves, and I think even as species, our bodies will adapt and change to the environment of space. So we would not look like we look today living on Earth eventually. So, and I think it's inevitable. It's something that it's in our nature to do, and it's a matter of timing. I'm hoping that it happens while I can see significant progress in that area.
Thank you, Anousheh, for being a role model for women and girls, to say there's a chance to actually, you know, be an astronaut and go into space. So can you describe to us your experience when you're entering Earth's orbit in the Soyuz?
Sure. So when you come back on the Soyuz, when you start your re-entry, it's literally looks and feels like you're riding a shooting star. So I actually saw footage of our re-entry, and it did look like a shooting star. So the capsule gets very, very hot. So inside it gets very hot. And then when the first parachute comes out, it's a very jarring experience. You know, there's a lot of movement and shaking, and then that happens a couple of times more. And I think one of the astronauts, I think, described it as being in a barrel and coming down the Niagara Falls. So it does feel like that. There's a lot of movement. But so you get disoriented. And then the landing itself, it's very impactful. The whole time you're coming down, you are told to, because when you sit in your seat, you're still a little loose because you're still floating. So you continuously have to buckle down. And so I had bruises on when I landed, actually, from the seatbelt. So it feels like, you know, you're like a little car crash almost, because it's really impactful. But at the end of it, you know, it all goes so fast. So the experience you go through, definitely worth it. But definitely not an experience of the shuttle landing. So Soyuz is very, very different. Yes?
So, خیلی خوبه. So the most touching thing for me from that movie, that you showed, was your comments looking down on the Earth without borders. So how do you envision the human Mars program will actually look?
Actually look at bringing everyone. So it's to
yeah,
me.
who will go to Mars? Like,
who will go to
what do you
Mars?
think? How will it be?
So I think I personally believe that the only way we'll make it to Mars is we work together, and I think it has to be a collaboration between many different nations to be able to make it happen if you want to have a settlement on Mars. And it requires, you know, a lot of sacrifices. I even think the first mission to Mars will be a one-way mission. And people who go on that mission will actually have to accept that fact and be okay with it, which I'm sure a lot of people are. I was one of those people. So I think, you know, what I see, there's a lot of advancements, and there's also a lot of hype, which, you know, sometimes there's a lot of noise that actually doesn't allow the true nature of the programs that have really valid plans in place to come out. But regardless, because we have a lot of now private industries and the government agencies working together, which is what's needed for a program of this magnitude. You do need, you know, the might of the government agencies and their entire infrastructure to support this. And then you need the enthusiasm and the risk-taking, you know, nature of the entrepreneurs behind what's happening to bring it all together. So I'm very happy about what I'm seeing. And more than anything else, I'm glad because I see it has also created this new interest in our young people about space and this new enthusiasm about space. And we need that. We need a lot of these young students sitting in their, you know, 8th grade class thinking about Mars and getting into the space program and becoming those Martian astronauts of the future. So I'm very happy about what I see. Yes?
What were your feelings and thoughts when Soyuz lifted off, and also when you first experienced weightlessness?
So when we took off, right before we took off, you know, we went through the sort of the list, the checklist, and making sure everything is okay. And then we had some time left, and we had these headsets. So they started playing classical music for us to relax. And at that moment, I sort of, just for a second, it was like, you know, like my whole life flashed in front of me. And I was thinking about, how the hell did I end up here? How did I get here? So it was about, you know, I was just thinking about my childhood and all the things that had to happen, all those sort of turning points in my life that, you know, allowed me to be that day in that rocket. I mean, even when I went to Russia to train, I was only invited to train as a backup. I wasn't even supposed to go to space. So I trained the entire time that I was there, the 7-8 months there, and only 3 weeks before the flight, as we finished the training, as I was going to the airport, my husband was coming to help me pack my bags. I got the call that the primary crew member had developed a medical condition that prevented him from flying. So they said, "We think you're ready, do you want to go?" And I'm like, what? I thought this is a practical joke. I'm like, this is not funny. You know how depressed I am today. This is not funny. Like, we're not joking. Do you want to go? So, you know, at that moment, I just, of course, it was the chance of a lifetime I've been waiting for, and I took it. But that's, you know, just thinking through all those things that had to line up for me to be there just gave me awe, and I was happy, and I was just praying to God. It's like, okay, if you're going to blow up, just make sure that I feel weightless and I can see Earth from space. Then if we blow up, I'll die happy. And fortunately, you know, we didn't blow up, and everything went fine, and we returned, and it was definitely better than anything I ever imagined.
So
thank you.
Here.
Yes.
Here, on the side. So you had the best view on the ISS. So my question is, did you ever get sleep on the ISS?
Very good question. No. I figured that I have very limited time, and I didn't want to sleep. So I would, you know, of course, pass out at times, and then I would wake up. It's like, no, I can't sleep. So the funny thing was that when we were getting ready to come back, you know, you sit in the capsule and they do leak check and a lot of different things. So you're sitting there for a while, and return is the most the dangerous part of the trip. So I kept falling asleep, and my crewmates thought, you know, something's wrong with me. It's like, you know, I would have to be scared out of my mind right now. How can I sleep? But I was just falling asleep, and they kept saying, "Anousheh, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm okay. I'm just sleeping." It's like, "You're just sleeping? What?" But it was, yeah, I didn't get much sleep on the station. I was next to that window, which they told me, you know, it's going to be cold, it's going to be noisy. I'm like, I don't care. I want to be next to this window. So it was wonderful. Yes. مرسی خیلی قشنگ شما صحبت میکنین فارسی. That was it.
Okay, so in 2001 and its sequel, 2010, Americans and Russians traveled to the outer solar system in spaceship Leonov.
Mm-hmm.
Have you kept in touch with Vinogradov or any of the other cosmonauts since you left?
Yes,
Russia?
I do, and I actually have been back to Roscosmos and spent time with actually people who trained me. So when I went there, actually, they did not really, they were not happy about having a woman in the program, even though the woman who went to space was Russian, but you know, for many years there were no women in the Russian space program. So they had to make a lot of adjustment, which, you know, they didn't like. But, you know, after a few months, they figured I'm not going anywhere. They tried very hard. And they figured, okay, and then and they saw my interest and my enthusiasm, and I think it was contagious enough that they became my best friends. So I stay in touch with them, I visit them. There's a program, or there's a group of that's called Association of Space Explorers. All the astronauts are part of ASE. So we meet once a year in one or different parts of the world, and we go to different universities and provide lectures to the students and get them interested in space. So I do see them, and it's every time I see them, they're a big part of my life. So I don't think I can ever forget them.
Okay.
Yes.
You spent 2 days on the Soyuz. Can you move around on the Soyuz?
So there's a little bit of space. You've seen pictures of it. Actually, I was just looking at the picture of Peggy Whitson and her return. So it's very tight. There are two modules that, you know, they're habitable modules. One is where you sit, and you're basically sitting with your knees to your chest, and not much room to move around. And then right above it, there's another area where you have a little bit of room, and there's enough for maybe 2 or 3 people standing next to each other. So not a lot of room for movement, but you just make do. It's right now. I think they can make that docking in 18 hours or less. So you don't have to spend 2 days. But I got very sick, to be honest with you, those 2 days. So I lost 2 days of space. But I didn't follow all the instruction that they kept telling me during the training, which is you're not supposed to move around too much the first 2 days. You have to allow your body to adjust. You should move slowly. You should not look out the window, which, you know, of course, you know, are you kidding me? I'm in space. I'm going to float and fly and do somersaults and look out the window. And then I got very sick and I had to take a shot. And so I lost a little bit of time. So thank you very much. It was wonderful to share this.
Excuse me one more time.
Yes.
So throughout the time that you were getting prepared and getting all the trainings, and I know that your family seems to be very supportive of all those things, but was there any point that you felt like, aside from all the support, deep down they might not really want you to go? And did they ever let you know about that, or, you know?
So, very good question. I'm sure none of them wanted me to go. But they never said anything because they also knew, I mean, from the beginning that this was my dream, and I don't think they knew that my life would be different if I didn't take that chance. So they loved me so much that love allowed them to deal with their anxiety and let me, you know, have this experience. So it definitely, I'm glad that I have such supportive family. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, actually. That was great. Okay, so comes to the part of the event where we're going to talk about awards. People may know that we had this year a Student Mars Art Contest. By the way, can we start having some of those pictures thrown up here? Now. Next chart, please. Okay. So this was divided into 3 categories, elementary, middle school, and high school. So this was actually the first place winner in the elementary school. You know, students were asked to depict the human future on Mars, and it could be any part of it from the first landing through colonization through terraforming Mars, anything. So this was first place. This was a student from the Philippines. We had over 150 entries, by the way. Next chart. This was second place in elementary. This was from a student from India. Next chart. And this one was the third place for elementary, and this was a tie. And I guess all these 3 students were from India. Let's go next. Middle school, first place is a student from Kentucky, Haley Reed. How about this, huh? Really superb art. Next, student from Turkey. So, I mean, these are students from all over, Philippines, Turkey, India. Okay, next, from Ghana. Okay, third place in the middle school, really nice. Next chart. This was first place in high school. This was from Canada, from Quebec. First place, Gabrielle Simard. Next chart. Second place from the Netherlands, Hannah van Gemmert. And next, third place was a tie, and the one from Turkey, 2 from Turkey, 1 from California, Jessica Liu, who actually is here. Okay, so Jessica, why don't you come up? Here we are. Jessica? Oh, here you are. Okay, well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. And I guess, okay, great. All right, so that's the Student Mars Art Contest. The next, what's the name? I don't see it. And okay, and by the way, we also have here present one of the students who won honorable mention. That's Laura Morris, and she did Dawn at an early Mars colony. Is Laura here? Over there. Okay. So we have a certificate for you, Laura. Okay, this is not Laura Morris.
Sorry.
There you are.
There you are.
Okay, Laura, here you go. Okay. All right. All right, so now we have, okay, all right. We have the Volunteers of the Years Award. And if they would come up, Anastasia Stepanova, Yasuki Murakami, Paul Knightley, Alexander Maggio, and not present, but also Jonathan Clark, Analia Beatty, Anousheh Srivastava, and Claude Michel LaRouche. These are the Mars 160 crew who did an outstanding job, did great science in the desert and in the Arctic, and also did a fantastic job for the Mars Society in taking the flashline Mars Arctic Research Station. We have not had a crew there since 2009, and bringing it back to life. We now have an Arctic station again. So,
Just say their name.
okay, so this is Anastasia. Congratulations. Jonathan Clark. Paul Knightley. I want my gun back, by the way. Okay. Okay. Alexander. And Claude Michel. And Yasuki.
Yep, thank you.
And here's Analia Beatty, Australia, and Anousheh Srivastava from India. Congratulations all. Let's have a photograph here. Okay, and by the way, she would get an award as well, but she got it last year, is Shannon Rupert, who was the principal investigator. Okay. Stand up, Shannon.
Stand up.
Stand up. All right.
Come on, come on.
All right. Without whose efforts this never would have come together. Okay, there we are. All right. Then we have a final award. I know, which is okay. The winning team of the University Rover Challenge, Missouri, come on up. Now, they already got their trophy in the desert right after they won. Okay, so we've been cut out of that action. But by the way, if you want to see their rover, they're giving a presentation tomorrow on the University Rover Challenge with the rover. And by the way, there will be another team, another strong contestant that was there, will also be presenting their rover, and they can have rover dances and rover fights and all the rest. Well, congratulations. And I might add, people should know, the University Rover Challenge, I believe there were about 40 entries this year from all over the world, and about 20 of them got eliminated before they got to the desert, because we cannot have more than around 20 in the desert. It's impossible to act. What? What? You had 30 in the desert. 83 teams applied this year, and 30 of them made it to the desert, and 35, okay. All right, 83 applied, 35 made it, 34 died. They're buried together on the countryside. Okay, but no, but look, even to make it there is a feat, to place is an honor, and to win is tremendous. So congratulations. Okay. So now this is our 20th conference. It's not, we haven't been in action for 20 years. George Whiteside's contested that this could be our 20th Congress when we only been in action 19 years, but actually if you think, if you count it out, you realize that it is. And anyway, but it's as good a time as any to review where we've been, what we've accomplished, and what we hope to accomplish. So I'd like to review. We had our founding convention in Boulder in 1998. And at that conference, we resolved that we would engage in 3 forms of activity. One was general public outreach to spread the vision. Second was political work to defend existing Mars programs, including the robotic Mars program, seek to expand it and support efforts to bring about a human Mars exploration program. And third was engage in projects of our own. And at that time, we identified the first one, which was to build a Mars analog research station in the Arctic. Okay, so we did build the Mars analog research station in the Arctic. There's now been 12 missions there, all told, since that time. And we also built a second one in the desert at the Mars Desert Research Station. There's been over 180 crews there. It's hard to keep track. They keep coming. But not only that, graduates of our program went on to establish a third Mars Analog Research Station in Hawaii, the High Seas program. Okay, and our program is now being emulated by the establishment of yet another station in Poland. And we have just heard that they're going to build a station in China. That is, we have opened up a new field of research, is what we have done. We have demonstrated the value of a new research tool, which is the Mars Analog Research Station, to learn how to explore on Mars, to conduct operations research, to send a team into such an environment, to task them to do a sustained program of field exploration and geology, microbiology, whatever, the kinds of things they do on Mars while operating under Mars mission constraints. And by so doing, learn what could work on Mars and what could not. And I should say that at this point, I mean, if you just heard those numbers, over 190 crews all told, perhaps 200, 6 people each, that's well over 1,000 people have been crew members in one station or another at one or more times. And in several cases, it's more than one rotation. So that's extraordinary. And we've democratized space research in this way by having broad participation, individuals from over 40 countries, from every continent, actually including Antarctica. have participated in one crew or another. Okay, no exceptions. 7 continents. So that is something that where we absolutely succeeded in, and actually much more than we set our goals on. We said at our founding convention that we would seek to push to expand to double the robotic Mars exploration program that is the mainstream one, and to seek to create a new program which we call Discovery Mars. At that time, there was a program in NASA called the Discovery Program, which was wide open to proposal from anyone that is PI-led teams, mostly from universities. In other words, to propose a concept that was outside of the thinking of the Central Committee at JPL. But what was going on was because there was an in-place Mars exploration program, that these discovery missions were not being given to Mars missions. They were being given to asteroid missions and small body missions and other such things, because it was considered that Mars had a program, and so the small bodies in particular should get these other things. So we called for creation of a Mars Discovery Program. Such a program was created under the name of the Mars Scout Program. And in fact, the first such mission, Mars Phoenix, was won by a founding member of the Mars Society, Professor Peter Smith from Arizona. And it was flown and it landed on the Martian North Pole in 2007. Okay? And also later on, another mission, MAVEN, was supported by this program, and that is orbiting Mars right now. And the robotic Mars exploration program budget was doubled. And now some of these things, if you're talking about developments in the political world, we were players with, others were players with. We can't take sole credit for them in the way that we can with our Mars Arctic Station, which is strictly us. Okay, but nevertheless, I would say with the Mars Scout program, we were the first to call for such a thing, and it did come to pass. The doubling of the budget was also supported by the Planetary Society, so there's teamwork there, but this was something where we played a role, and it happened. I should also say that I was invited to brief Scott Hubbard, who was the Mars Czar, so-called, under Dan Golden, and in 2000, and he asked me what I thought the priority mission should be for the Mars exploration program. And I said a very capable Mars high-resolution photo reconnaissance orbiter and rover missions, and I'd like to have them launched 2 at a time. Okay, and he undoubtedly was getting similar recommendations from other people, but those missions happened: Spirit, Opportunity, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. The broad public outreach side of the Mars Society, okay, this seems to be the most nebulous form of our activity. In other words, you can identify things we did in the political sphere and building stations, but, you know, just spreading ideas around, what does that do? Well, what that does is those ideas recruit to the banner of Mars all sorts of people, including people with very high abilities as well as average abilities. And one such person, I mean, as I mentioned, that we brought around, and of course we're not the sole influence on him, but you know, we held a fundraiser in the Bay Area in 2001, and it was $500 a plate. Somebody sent in a check with $5,000 on it. It was Elon Musk. And so he came, he heard what we had to say, and I met with him very extensively. He joined the board of the Mars Society for a while. It gave us $100,000, which helped build the Mars Desert Research Station. Though after a certain amount of time, he said, look, I don't want to be a member of somebody else's team. I do my own thing. And he went off and he started SpaceX, and which is making historic effects right now. So, you know, spreading ideas
and then having people act on those ideas in their own way, in their own time. In fact, it is probably the most effective thing that we do, okay, more than any concrete activity. So where are we going here? Okay, then of course there's been the University Rover Challenge. 83 teams. These teams are typically at least 5 people, more typically 10 on such a team. So you're talking about at least 500 people participated in this contest this year. If we look at this, thing's been going since around 2006. Probably several thousand students have participated in this University Rover Challenge activity. We've had these conferences now since 1998. Thousands of people have written papers. 5 books, volumes of such papers were published, 3 by Univelt and 2 by Apogee, right, under the editorship primarily of Frank Crossman, and hundreds more published online under our Mars Papers archive available to the community. So we're allowing thousands of people to put their ideas into the overall debate and discussion on how humans can explore and settle Mars and every facet of such discussions. And our papers, our conferences have been extremely open to all kinds of papers that come at this from all points of view. We have an open debate process. We've also forced the debate on a number of issues, because one problem that there's been in the space program has been that major initiatives have been undertaken based on a couple of people getting together and saying, let's do this, without these ideas being subject to the scrutiny of reason through open and debate. And so we forced the debate on the asteroid retrieval mission, or asteroid redirect mission, had a formal debate, and they showed up last year, and there was a group of MIT students wrote a severe critique of Mars 1, and rather than let them make that critique in the absence of Bas Lonsdorff, and rather than let Bas Lonsdorff make his claims in the absence of his critics, we forced them to come together and debate each other directly at our conference in Washington. I think that created a lot of clarity, and you can see that debate online. It was one for the books. Now, we wanted to have a debate on the Deep Space Gateway. Last night, I had invited the main proponents of that program, including at NASA headquarters, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and the ULA, to come. They all declined because the program's indefensible. We did have a volunteer come up who pointed out that if the purpose of the space program is to give money to Lockheed Martin and Boeing, then this is the right program. Okay. So it was difficult to argue with that. So thousands of papers presented, thousands of young engineers participating in URC, thousands of people participating as crew people in the Mars Analog Research Station program. We've also involved in encouraging people who then went off establishing various STEM programs in the schools, and so forth. So I think we've done a lot, actually. Now, we got to do more. Well, I'm going to say a few more things, actually, that we've done. Okay, because Curiosity had some severe overruns during its development period. And there were certain influential people, including Alan Stern, who called for canceling it, okay, who actually said, and in the New York Times said, that budget management is just as important as mission success. He said that. I rebutted him in the New York Times. No, budget management is not as important as mission success. Okay, mission success is more important. If you have an overrun, you have an overrun. If you have a mission failure,
You have nothing, okay? I spoke to Mike Griffin about this, and of course there were other people as well, but our side won that debate and curiosity went on. What can I say? Lots of stuff. Now, we also, I was invited to testify in the US Senate in the fall of 2003, post-Columbia failure. What should the US space program do? Okay, and I said, if you're going to have a human spaceflight program, it has to have goals worthy of the cost and risk of the human spaceflight program. And the greatest tragedy of Columbia wasn't merely that a group of very fine people were killed, but they were killed on a mission that was unworthy of the risk of their lives. I mean, if you simply look at the science program of the Columbia mission, it's not defensible. And the Columbia, that flight that they were on. And this mission included the guy who knocked out the Iraqi nuclear bomb factory. He risked his life to do that. He got killed doing an experiment with, I'm not making this up, okay, using urine for watercolor painting. Okay, because somebody advanced the idea that astronauts would want to do watercolor painting and a convenient fluid available. It was crazy stuff. Okay, you know, this guy, if he was going to die in space, should have died on the first human mission to Mars, or at least a return to the moon, or something that was worthy of his courage. In any case, the Bush administration proceeded to embrace this and define vision for space exploration. Okay, that our response to the Columbia accident was not to retreat, but to go for a much more ambitious program. Okay, but Administrator O'Keefe thought that he could use the announcement of the vision for space exploration as sugar to help the medicine of abandoning Hubble go down. Okay, and we weren't willing to accept that. And some people here may remember we took a very hard line on the desertion of Hubble, okay, and virtually ran O'Keefe out of office. NASA people leaked information to me that completely refuted his contention that it was far more dangerous to fly to Hubble than to the space station, so we shouldn't go back to Hubble. In fact, it was a mistake to fix and upgrade Hubble the previous 4 times that we did it. But of course, a space program that's afraid to Hubble isn't going to the moon or Mars. Okay, and of course, a space program that deserts perhaps its finest scientific achievement. Okay, in fact, one of the finest achievements of humanity ever. Okay, a cathedral, a Gothic cathedral to our commitment to the search for truth, the highest ideals of the 20th century. Okay, that it would just desert it. Okay, that kind of thing, that can't be accepted. And we helped win that fight. And we were particularly useful because unlike some astronomers who were defending that, we didn't have a dog in that fight. We weren't defending a particular interest. We were defending principle. Okay, so that was great. But the vision for space exploration, well, O'Keefe didn't really want to do it. He was eventually replaced by Griffin, who did. But Griffin reified it from a Moon-Mars initiative to a Moon-only initiative, and so it pretty much got a very narrow base of public support, which made it easy to kill. And so that under the Obama administration, we had entropy, where we had no real definite goal for the human spaceflight program, and that remains the case today. Now, we need to have a space program with a goal. And, I mean, the robotic space program has goals. That's why they accomplish things. The space astronomy program has goals. That's why it accomplishes things. The human spaceflight program, with the exception of Apollo and Hubble, has operated in the absence of meaningful goals. And this has been a real problem. And so it's got to be given that again. And there we are. Now, those people who follow my political writings, which are copious, I am prolific, yes, know that I'm not a supporter of Mr. Trump, but I do actually think that the choice of Bridenstine is a rather good choice for NASA administrator. I say that without I mean, ordinarily I'd be looking for grounds to attack him. The only grounds I have for attacking this, he's wasted 9 months with no NASA administrator. Okay, that's a problem. So it came far too late. But Bridenstine is a congressman who, I mean, has been very active in space. He sponsored the Space Renaissance Act and various other things. I met with him in his office. He was extremely knowledgeable. He had read, for instance, The Case for Mars. Yeah, okay. I mean, O'Keefe couldn't spell space. Really, I mean, literally. I mean, I went to a hearing, O'Keefe was there. He didn't know what X-33 had been, which was a major NASA initiative of a few years prior to his tenure. This guy is involved, this guy, and think about this. He's leaving Congress. He's a Republican congressman from Oklahoma. He could never lose an election. Okay, never. Okay, if he wants that seat, he has that seat for as long as he wants it. Okay, to take on a NASA job of NASA administrator in this current messed up situation, and with Trump with an uncertain future, and therefore himself with an uncertain future as a Trump appointee, is he wants to do something. Now, it's quite possible that the direction he'll go will be moon soon. Okay, return to the moon within the time of the Trump administration. I don't think that, while that's not our optimal program, it's much better than a NASA with no meaningful objectives, far better. And if they do develop and implement a transportation system that can do lunar missions, that disciplines the thinking about how to do Mars, because all of a sudden now you've got this system that can throw substantial payloads, deliver substantial payloads into low lunar orbit. Going from LEO to low lunar orbit is the same delta V is required to go from LEO to trans-Mars injection. And so that you could, it would definitely advance the cause. And in any case, if we continue to have a human spaceflight program that drifts without meaningful accomplishments, it's trying the patience of the American people. Frankly, it is. And it's running the risk that we lose the space program altogether when people ultimately just throw up their hands. So we're going to be supporting this. And I should say, but that's just the first step, because we do want to shape that program. We don't want it to just go entropic. We're going to be putting together a thing to revive our political outreach. A political expert has approached us and explained this process where we can hold, and we will be holding, monthly telecons, which everyone can join in on. It'll be moderated. But to mobilize people around the political issue of the day, to contact their congressman to say, look, this needs to be funded, this needs this bill should be supported, so forth. So we're going to be doing that. We're going to be doing a major STEM initiative. People heard a little bit from the Hewlett-Packard people. They've got this huge STEM initiative, a virtual reality Mars kind of thing. We are going to be participating in that. If you want to volunteer to be a participant, to be a judge or something, there's a link that was put out there. I am going to be a judge and a member of the technical advisory board of this thing. Already 18,000 people have signed up as contestants. We're going to do a couple of contests. I have to apologize to people. A lot of people hope that I will attend their talk in the conference, but if you have 4 parallel tracks, it's impossible for me to necessarily be in your talk. But I have attended a number of them, and one of them that I found extremely interesting today was by, I think his name was Professor Lane from North Carolina. Are you here, Professor Lane? But he talked about historical analogs, in particular Walter Raleigh, and how that episode of English colonization of North America compared to what we're trying to do, Roanoke, Jamestown, and all that. And it reminded me of something that we had done in the early years of the Mars Society, which was we had held a contest called the Hackett Prize, which was a prize for the best student letter to world leaders advocating the human exploration of Mars. Okay? And this was named the Hackett Prize after Richard Hakluyt, who was this individual in Elizabethan England who conceived of this idea of the New World. He organized a network called the New World Society, which included people like Walter Raleigh and other, and Queen Elizabeth and other influentials in that circle who thought we want to create a new England in the New World. And they had certain utopian ideas, quite literally, because the book Utopia had been written, well, sometime earlier, but that somehow if we created a new England, we could bring the best there and leave the worst behind and create something better. And, you know, despite everything that has been very imperfect about America, to a significant extent that program was true. I mean, you know, we have certainly have always had class distinction in America, but we've never had blood nobility. We've had religious prejudice, but we've never had religious war or religious persecutions among the principal evils of the old world at that time. So anyway, Hakluyt was a chief advocate of this. So in his honor, okay, we're going to reinstitute the Hakluyt Prize, which is a contest for students to write letters to world leaders. And so it's both the quality of the letter, but also the effort they made to get it to world leaders that comes into the evaluation. And we're going to run that prize again. We're also going to be doing a design contest, an engineering design contest for university students. And what it's going to be is to design a lander to land 10 tons on Mars. NASA. I was in a debate with a NASA headquarters person in May, and so I was criticizing the Deep Space Gateway, and she says, well, look, we can't go to Mars because we don't have a lander that can land 10 tons on Mars, and that's why we're doing the Deep Space Gateway. And I said, look, if the problem is that you don't have a lander that can land 10 tons on Mars, you should have a program to develop a lander that can land 10 tons on Mars. So we're going to let the students show them how to do it. And once again, just like the Gemini Mars contest, this will be completely open internationally to students from any country, you know, United States, Russia, Europe, India, anywhere. They can all compete on this. We'll publishing some clear requirements for what this thing needs to be, but there's going to be tremendous design freedom. They can land it using parachutes, using supersonic retro propulsion, using rockets or airbags or wings or helicopter blades or balloons, anything. Get 10 tons to the surface of Mars. The one that does it best wins. Okay? So, and we will have the finalists to that present to our next conference next year. So those are some of our initiatives that we're going to be doing going forward. So we're going to be politically active. We're going to be inspiring young people to think about Mars exploration by writing, and we're going to be encouraging university students, engineers, to develop their talent and make creative and useful contributions by laying out designs of a Mars lander. I'm thinking of calling this the Eagle Mars contest. You know, the Eagle was the vehicle that landed on the moon. Okay, so we need an Eagle for Mars. So it'll be Eagle Mars or Mars Eagle. Soon enough, we'll find exactly the right name. But that is some of the things we're going to be doing. And the finalists will make their presentations at our next conference. And I don't know the exact location of our next conference yet. It could be here, or it could be People like this place? Okay. I like this place. This is a good place to have a conference. But it could be elsewhere. A lot of the stuff depends upon contacting the venue and find out if they have the facility at the right time and all of this and that kind of thing. But I think we're definitely going to be on the West Coast. This is where it's happening: SpaceX, JPL, Blue Origin, etc. Okay, and so on. So there it is. We've accomplished a lot, but certainly there's a lot that remains to accomplish. And we're going to have to work at it. Of course, we'll also be doing the URC again. Doing it again. And I'm going to investigate whether we can expand that to the high school level. We attempted to do that this past year, but there were various difficulties. We did not adequately publicize it. Our partner, the Wings Over the Rockies Museum, had a management reorganization right in the middle of the fall when they had promised to help publicize the contest, and instead the various people that were going to do it were gone. And but we'll see if we can do that. I can't promise we're going to do that, but I can promise we're going to look into it to see if we can do it. Anyway, there we are. We've been upgrading the Mars Desert Research Station, as people may know who have been watching it. Now has solar power, electric rovers, a science lab, and other things. We're even going to get probably an auxiliary module that will allow us to either have, at our option, expanded crews or even hold conferences there, small conferences there. But anyway, this is what we're up to. This is what we're doing. I think that for an organization that operates on a shoestring with essentially no paid staff, we do a remarkable job. But that said, we can't do it all for free. So on your tables, probably hidden by the sheet music, but they're there, pull them out, are forms for making donations. And you can write a check, you can just fill out a credit card thing there. But we would really appreciate it if you can donate. I'll tell you that I am going to donate $1,000 to the Mars Society, and if you're in good shape financially, I hope you will do that. If your means don't allow that, see if you can do 100, whatever works, 25. Okay, and there it is. Now. Also, for those of you who want to get something in return for your money, we have the conference poster, which has the signature on it of every plenary speaker at the conference. So we are going to auction it off. Okay, let's see, do we have an opening bid of... 100? 150? Oh, come on. You're going to let this guy steal it for $150? 200? 300? 300? That's still just robbery. Come on. Anyone? So who made the bid of 300? James Melton. What? How much, Jack? 400. Okay. Anyone? Don't let Jack get this for $400. That's outrageous. You've got Paul Davies' signature on this. This guy knows the mind of God. What? 450. 460.
Well, there's Greg Benford, okay, just undoubtedly is Jeff Landis is on this. David Brin, okay. The entire Mars 160 crew. Okay. I mean, really? 500. Who'd said 500? Okay. Jack, don't let him get away with this. What? So we got $500 going once, going twice, going once, going twice. All right, sold to James Milton for $500. Okay, and all right, make sure it has all the signatures. All right, so anyway, look, I mean it about the money. We can't do this stuff without money. So make a donation, whatever your means will afford. We really appreciate it. And with that, rise to Mars.